Donna Jones is the Police and Crime Commissioner for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Thank you very much for being with us. I mean, what is so shocking about this case is that people witnessed the kidnap, how he got his handcuffs out, how he used his warrant card, and they didn't know that anything was amiss. Do you fear what this will mean for other women who might react differently in future when they come across a police officer?
Thank you for having me on this evening. Before I get started on that answer, if you don't mind, I just want to say how incredibly brave I think Mr. and Mrs. Everard have been, and Sarah's sister Katie. Their statements today, I think, have gone to the heart of most people across Great Britain, and this case has gone to the heart of many of us, particularly to the government, and also rocked the heart of policing as well. In answer to your question, yes, I mean, obviously it's a concern. This is a huge dent to the trust and confidence in policing. When you do have a Metropolitan Police officer who uses his warrant card, these are thankfully extremely rare circumstances. And I do want to reassure the public that the police officers that I have met are outstanding. They are professional. They join policing because they want to protect the community, particularly vulnerable people. So this is a very, very rare and isolated incident. But yes, I think the point you're making in your question is naturally it is going to have an effect. If you're a young girl walking in that location and perhaps you're pulled over by a police car, of course it will run through your mind.
Well, is it isolated? Sue Fish, who is the former police chief constable for Nottinghamshire Police, has spoken about how she was sexually assaulted when she was in the force by a younger officer, by two senior colleagues, actually, when she was a younger officer. And she says there's this culture of sexism within the police force that's not being called out. She spoke today to the BBC's World at One programme. This is what she said.
Actually, what's apparent, and I can't speak for the Couzens example, but I know with other incidents where there have been predatory sex offenders in policing, colleagues have known something's not right, but it's never reported. And I think it's a bit like safeguarding in schools where teachers are actively encouraged to report low-level concerns, because it may be there's nothing to it, but it may be there is something far more serious, and it can be addressed at the earliest stage rather than, as we're looking at now, the sentencing of a predatory what was a police officer.
I mean, that is a crucial point that she makes, because we do know from reporting that 3 days before this murder, he was seen by other officers indecently exposing himself. Now, the point is, police officers are never off duty. And if safeguarding was better within the force, that would have come to light, wouldn't it?
Well, yes. I mean, first of all, the IOPC, the Independent Police Complaints, are looking into those allegations of Wayne Couzens indecently exposing himself, dating back, I think, 2 or 3 incidents going back to 2015. And I think we really do need to wait and see what the outcome of that independent investigation is to find out what lessons need to be learned, if any, so that all police forces can learn from it and move forward. Going back to Sue Fish's comments, I mean, I think from my understanding, they were probably dating back 20 years ago. And actually, I think the country has come a long way in those 20 years. It's not only a culture in policing where there have been issues around approaches of inappropriate sexual activities towards women in the workplace. This spans from going out to bars, pubs, nightclubs, women having their bottoms pinched years ago. That was very much commonplace. And sadly, some of these things are still going on. I think it's right that the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary have been so focused on the violence against women and girls agenda. And certainly myself, as a national lead for victims across the country, representing commissioners and millions of people that live in this country, more does need to be done. Now, in terms of the culture of inside policing itself, yes, when things like this happen, we need to make sure, as you know, the chief constables and for people like myself as commissioners, that any police officer that's working in this country that feels uncomfortable or has any concerns about a colleague should be able to report that without fear of any kind of retribution whatsoever. They are in a very responsible and trusted job. They have access to a huge amount of people's personal information, in particular vulnerable people. And if you're working alongside somebody and you have a concern, whatever industry, but particularly in policing, you should be able to report that.
it is an offence if you don't respond to a police officer's instructions. So in the immediate term, I mean, there are concerns about vetting and about safeguarding, but in the immediate term, if a young woman is walking home and is stopped by a single police officer, what should she do?
Well, I think what I would do if it were me, and I thought something didn't seem right, is I'd say to the police officer, can I see your warrant card? Can you just tell me again why you want to pull me over, why you're stopping and searching me, or why you are, wanting to arrest me?
But he'd rehearsed all this. He produced his warrant card and then he handcuffed her.
He had rehearsed it. If I had a concern, I think I would be saying to the police officer, I don't think you have grounds to arrest me. I think this is unlawful. I'm going to call 999 now and speak to the control room and check that you are a real live police officer who is on duty. Look, it's easy for me to say that now, isn't it? Because we've all learnt about the horrific incident that happened to Sarah. And she was a law-abiding citizen. She was walking home and actually she got stopped by a police officer with a valid Metropolitan Police warrant card, and she obliged, even though I'm sure she probably thought she'd done nothing wrong. She obliged because she thought that was the right thing to do, because she was law abiding. I don't think any of us can understand what her family are going through, because today what it must have done for them is brought all of this back to life again. When they heard some of the incidents that occurred around her actual illegal arrest on the roadside there in South London on the 3rd of March last year, it really has shocked the country. There is much work to be done. And I do think it's important that policing, with the recruitment and the police uplift programme that we have, more women are recruited and more people are recruited that represent society as a whole. I really think that will also help to rebuild trust and confidence in policing as well.
Yeah, some good advice in there. And yes, our deep sympathies for the family. It is a terrible case. Donna Jones, thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.